Hello.
Hey JJ, how are you?
How wonderful to see you.
Yeah, and likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um, what's that?
been a long time since we've had an in person.
I know, I know. I was gonna say that I met you when you were playing with Lee Harvey Osmond and also with Daniel Romano.
Right.
And but I know that you do so much more than that. So why don't you start us off by telling us who you are, where you are, and what you do?
Okay, sure. Well, I'm Aaron Goldstein. I'm in Toronto. I'm actually in my studio, Baldwin Street Sound, um, where there have been no clients by my choosing, but it remains an isolated and safe place for me to be during this whole thing. Um, What do? I do a lot of things. I am a performing side musician on record and live, but over the past several years, I've become more of a producer of music, um, producing mainly like instrument-based records here at the studio and at a few different previous studios. But I've been here now for uh, I'm going to say it's 4 years, 4+ years in this space now. And yeah, made a lot of records here. Oh,
Fantastic.
yeah.
And tell me, with all that's going on and with not having clients there, how are you passing the time since we've all been stuck in place?
Um, I'm passing it in a number of different ways. I do have a little bit of work still that I'm able to do on my own. People have been sending me tracks to play. Like I still play a lot of pedal steel on records, and you can't see, but I'm sitting in front of it right now. And people have sent tracks, which is great. The main thing is I have a 4-year-old, and the schools are closed, of course. So I'm spending most of my days at home with my boy, and so I actually find that I've had more work come in than I can even handle. I have a bunch of tracks that I'm meant to be producing right now, just remotely for people. Like we'll sort of um, uh, somebody hipped me to this software where I can connect with a client, with someone whose track I'm doing, and they can hear in real time. They can hear the full or almost full quality audio, and they can hear what I'm doing. And they'll send me a vocal, or I'll, through that software, I can encourage what they do on the vocal track, and they'll send it to me. I have a bunch of that stuff that's sort of waiting and about to. Actually, the next couple of days, I'm going to tackle one of them. That's one I've been looking forward to. But yeah, it's a pretty backwards way to be right now because I'm used to being in here like more than I should. Like I'm in here a lot, definitely the whole work week and often really late during the week. I try to stay home on the weekends, but then I'm often playing on the weekends, and so now all of that's just like gone. Um, but yeah, there is like for the times that I can get in here, there's enough music for me to make. There is stuff that I can do, um, which is which is great. But I mean, I just wish that I'm not going to send my boy to daycare or anything. Like there's a few little daycares that are popping open, and it doesn't seem like the right time right now.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm just sort of doing what I can.
It's pretty amazing that you're still able to do some collaborative things. Imagine if this had happened 25, even 15 years ago, it would be a totally different thing.
Yeah, it's totally wild, and the thing that I think is, I mean, I would love for people to be able to get together on a platform like Zoom or whatever and play in real time together, which is not really working right now for people. But we kind of have a close second. Like a lot of tracks are done remotely anyway. I don't really, I didn't tend to really produce that way before. Like I was all about a band in the room and all that. Um, I still am about that, and I would like to be about that again. Uh, but but yeah, I guess like so much of what you would hear on the radio right now has probably been bounced around between how many producers and how many different writers and stuff. So I guess in that world, it's maybe not a whole lot different. And I'm just finding that like, okay, well, I can still do things that I am proud of and that I like in that way, and I'm going to have to right now. There's definitely a question mark now of like, I mean, I know the world will at some point be back to normal, but the question is when. And when can I reasonably have a studio full of musicians again? Um, And so that kind of raises the question, like, how long am I going to, prop up this 1,000+ square foot studio? So that's definitely a question. The landlord's been pretty cool about it. And up here in Canada, there's a lot of stimulus. Like there's like working people have like a personal stimulus, but then there's a commercial rent stimulus and all that stuff. So far, I've not, lost my shirt. But I just don't know how things are going to go in the future, and it's definitely scary. Um, but I'm going to keep on trucking. I mean, I guess the best thing I can hope to do is just like continue to do the best work that I can. And I have to acknowledge, I am lucky to be able to have that focus to be like, okay, I'm going to work with the circumstances to do the best work I can. I know that in other places, people are like, how am I going to eat? And that is wild to me. But it could happen here soon too, when the stimulus sort of ends. So I don't know. We'll see.
Um, I love that you mentioned that you're sitting behind a pedal steel right now,
Yeah,
because in my head I always picture you behind pedal steel, so that's kind of perfect.
right on. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time. I guess if people like are familiar with what I've done, they're most likely familiar with pedal steel work. I did a lot of it. I still do a lot of it. I don't really travel as much anymore. Well, certainly not traveling at all now. Um, but I do. I have been taking the odd thing. It sort of depends what it is. I've been doing a lot of weekends. I've been trying to adopt the Steve Cropper model, where Steve Cropper worked at Stax like Monday to Thursday, and he produced cuts and played on records, and then he'd go out on the weekend and play with Otis or whoever. And I feel like that's a really good model. And to try not to work every weekend, but to go out when I have to or when I'd like to, is definitely enticing. Um, but it's different from, there's a lot of people, the pedal steel is this like wondrous kind of complicated instrument, and there are people who have devoted their lives to it. And I have in a way, but I do all kinds of other things. And there's some people who live in this instrument like, their whole lives. And I don't know if I'll ever be that person. I'm just too ADD, I think. But I do love doing it a lot, and I love being able to do what I can do on it.
Are you getting to listen to much music that you're not working on? Like when you're not at the studio, are you listening to music with your son? Is there music in your house?
Totally. In fact, more so than ever. Because my old life, which I don't know if I'll get back. I mean, who knows? But I didn't listen to a lot of music that I wasn't working on because I was working all the time. And I would come home, and no, I shouldn't say that. My son is 4, and as he started to talk, I started to play him, Beatles and stuff like that. Stuff that like I was so obsessed with as a kid, but then later it was just like such a part of me that like I didn't have to put on the because it was already up here, and like I would never find myself putting on a Beatles record like for 2 decades easily. And then I found that when he was younger, when he was around 2.5, and I started to play a lot of music for him, I was putting on these records that I hadn't heard in so long, and I was just really having a rediscovery of them. Not just the Beatles, but like even before Tom Petty died, I remember putting on "You Don't Know How It Feels" for my son and having this like emotional reaction to the song about how fucking good it was, like, and just how everything about that song is so perfect. And I was like, I haven't heard this song in millions of years, but I'm like hearing it through his ears, kind of, and it just felt so good and just sounded so good. And I'm feeling that way about everything that I play for him now. And he's going to be 5 in November, so he's with it. He talks a lot. He knows what's going on, and I've been playing all kinds of things for him that probably no 5-year-old has any business knowing. Like he knows all about the Traveling Wilburys and who was in that band and what other bands they're from, and he knows which Beatles are alive and which Beatles are dead. Everybody that I put on, he wants to know, are they
My
dead?
niece is really into this too. My brother sent me a video. She has been listening to the Beatles, asking for it since she could talk.
Yeah.
And we'll have really in-depth conversations with you about the merits of each album. And he sent me a video a couple weeks ago, and she was telling her little sister, who's a year old, um, this is George, and this is Ringo. Ringo is alive. John is dead. This is like the phase she's at. And she's about that age too. It's
Amazing.
interesting.
Totally. So yeah, I mean, all kinds of records go on the turntable, and records come off the shelf that I remember obsessing over, that have just been on the shelf for years, that are new to him, and now they're like new again to me, which feels so good. A lot of Ray Charles, a lot of recently I've been trying to put on more country records to sort of be like, what do you think about country music? And Eli's kind of like, nah, sometimes it's not about a genre for him. It's like, does the song speak to him? And he'll say, I like this song or I don't like this song. But I've been doing this thing on my Instagram. I kind of like shackled myself with this responsibility of, those things where there's like a template and you post 30 songs in 30 days and it's like what the song means to you or whatever. Well, somebody in my sort of network, Lana Gay, who's a friend and a radio personality up here, she posted one that was one song per day, and it was by year. It was like, I think 1980 to 2010 or something like that, 30 songs in total. And I messaged her and I was just like, where's the one that starts at 1950? And she was like, make it for yourself. So I did. I almost kind of felt like it was a challenge. And as of yesterday, I was up to 1969 posting, but I couldn't be satisfied with a song per day. And now I'm at this point where I'm posting like 25 songs every day for whatever.
Wow.
So, and it takes up so much of my time and I want to stop so desperately, but I can't. I'm just a completist. I want to finish what I've started. And so that's really a lot of what I've been listening to. And I started a playlist to feature all the songs that I've had on this thing. And it's like 8.5 hours long now.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so that has really, so like every morning and every evening when I'm setting up the next day, I'm looking at charts for every year. I'm looking at R&B, country, pop charts, and then I'm looking at album charts as the years went on, because in the early 50s it wasn't so much a thing, but once I got to like the mid to late 60s, I was looking at album charts. So now it's like every day I'm listening to and looking at, I guess, my favorite songs from all these eras. And it's like, part of me is like, why am I doing this? But I do understand that because it's such an insane and traumatic time, I think I'm like kind of regressing to something that's very comfortable and very soothing to me. Just absorbing old music and preaching about it in a way. And I think that's okay. I don't know. It takes up a lot of time, but it's definitely comforting.
I think that's good. And it sounds like there are some people in the comments saying that they've been following along and they appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. I'm glad.
I want to ask you a question that was not on the list of questions I sent ahead of time. With all that's going on across the United States the last few days, I'm curious what that looks like from the outside, from Toronto, what you're seeing as a Canadian watching this.
I mean, the whole thing is devastating. In Canada, we have tended to have this idea that somehow we are morally superior. Like, well, we didn't vote Trump in, and we didn't, we don't behave that way. But the truth is, like, we have that shit here too, and it's something that every time these protests sort of ignite, in my network, people are reminding each other, that this goes on in Canada too. I mean, it went on with our Indigenous people. We had there was an inquiry in the last several years that called what we did to our Indigenous people a genocide when Canada was founded, and so that is something that we are guilty of. And truthfully, a couple days ago, there was an incident here with a black woman and our police where it's unclear what happened, but she fell from a very high balcony to her death during a police confrontation. And so we had a massive protest here yesterday, mostly peaceful from my understanding, in the name of both George Floyd and of this woman who died here too. Um, Again, it's unclear. Like that situation is not as cut and dried as George Floyd, but we don't know what happened. Um, and I feel like I don't know. It's a tough thing to stomach. It's really insane to see it going on um, from the outside because I see what's going on in all the major cities down there. We don't have the sort of looting thing happening, but I mean, it could happen tonight. I don't know. Um, People are angry here the same way as they're angry everywhere, with obviously very good reason. It's yesterday when I was going to post my songs, this list of songs that I do every day. At one point, I was kind of like, "What am I doing this for? Like, the world is on fire. Why, why am I bothering myself to like finish this 30 songs, 30 years thing, 30 days and 30 years?" And then I was kind of like, I looked at my list because I prepared a list, and the night before, and as it is so many days, so many of the performers I was going to feature were black. And I was like, why would I not celebrate, first of all, anybody, but certainly the people who are crying out against their own oppression? Why would I not celebrate those people today? So I kind of tweaked yesterday's list to be more central to uh, sort of protest songs or songs about resolution or things like that, or in general, just featuring black performers. I don't even know if that was, as I was doing it, I was like, is this even the right thing to do? It's hard to know. But yeah, it's difficult. What is the world? I mean, when these protests have erupted several times, over the past several decades anyway. I mean, it kind of keeps happening. I was a little bit too young for like LA '92, but I remember it. And and since then it's been happening, with great regularity. And it's like, what is going to be the catalyst for change here? I know, and I don't mean to get this way, but I was talking this morning with my wife about how would Obama have handled this. It's not that racism is Trump's fault per se. He didn't start racism, but it's really on him to handle it in a certain way. And how would Obama or even George Bush have handled it? Um, and really, we think obviously, I think anybody could have handled it better.
Yeah.
Anybody handling it better. What's the answer? I mean, there's no easy fix for the whole thing, but definitely vote Trump the fuck out of office. At the end of the year, that'd be a good start, I think. Get
Yeah.
somebody there who can empathize.
Yeah, an adult with some basic empathy would be a really good start. Yeah, I agree. He didn't invent racism, but he certainly has emboldened racists in a huge way that I think we're only beginning to understand with what's been happening very recently. But thank you for talking about that a little bit. And to your point about music, I get that, in questioning, is this the right thing? We don't want it to be tokenism, but if you start looking at influential music that influenced music as we know it today, it's going to come back every time to Black musicians.
Yeah,
So it's only natural that the things you love from that era, is predominantly Black musicians. So I'm glad that you've continued to post, and I think that just naturally illustrates something good.
yeah, of course. Uh, I want to point out. I don't mean to be. Well, whatever. I was speaking speaking to somebody just about an hour ago. A friend of mine, Evan Redsky, who's a musician here in Toronto, who had gotten himself into an argument with the blues musician Joe Bonamassa on Instagram because Joe was upset. Someone had spray painted FTP, which I'm sure means fuck the police. They'd spray painted it on the Stevie Ray Vaughan statue in Austin. I guess it's in Austin. It must be. And like, I don't know, seems an appropriate time to spray paint FTP on everything. And I am not full. I don't fully subscribe to the like all cops are bad thing, but I know that there's a problem, and I think that like that spray paint will wash off, and it's not a big deal. And Joe was upset about it and posting about it, so Evan, my pal, kind of goaded him in the comments. He was like, "Dude, you make blues music, like you are making a healthy living on the backs of generations of black musicians, and you can't speak up about this. All you have to do is type 'I support.' That's really all you have to do. I mean, it'd be great if you did more, but what he could do is not be a whiny baby." And and I think they had a little back and forth. He sent me some screenshots. They had a back and forth where Joe would not give it up, and I couldn't believe it. I was just like, man, it's so easy for you with your platform to say, I support what's going on, and I don't condone racism. You know? Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Like the blues, man. The blues.
yeah. How is that a conversation that anybody has to have?
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Well, I'm glad your friend spoke up about it. And that's been my challenge to myself and is going to be my challenge going forward. Everyone I interact with, how are we actively calling things like that out every time? Okay. So to wrap things up, tell us where people can go to find out more about what you do and how to best support you right now and the things that you care about the most.
Sure. Well, I put out a record last year, and I played a couple of these like online concerts or whatever. I think I'm going to do one more too. And at the end of it, when I'm sort of pitching my merch, I tell everybody, Bandcamp is kind of the best and easiest platform that removes almost all semblance of middleman between the people who make the music you love and you. And, in thinking about this whole streaming thing, I keep thinking like Bandcamp really has the model. You can stream 3 times, and then you can choose to buy. It'll never take off the way Spotify has. But anyway, I have a record. It's on Bandcamp. There's LPs, CDs, and I have a new shirt design that I put out because this Friday is another one of the Bandcamp revenue waiving days where they waive their portion. Even when they take their portion, like they can have it. They're a great platform that is doing what we need. So yeah, my record is called Espanola, which is a town north of Toronto here, and I've never even been there. It's a whole story. Anyway,
Really?
yeah, I don't even know if there's much going on up there. I have someone who's sort of a fan of the band who's messaged me a few times to say she's from Espanola, and I was like, well, book me a gig. Let's see if the town shows up. I don't know. There's a big pulp and paper mill there. That's all I really know. And it's on the way. Like when you're a young idiot, like I have been for so long, maybe not young anymore. When you make the drive from Toronto and you're going to drive west to tour Canada, you first have to drive northwest for like 24 hours to get out of Ontario to get to Winnipeg. And on the way, you will pass through Espanola. And then the next town on the highway is called Spanish. So yeah, espanola.bandcamp.com. That's where you can buy my record, LP, CD, shirt. Friday's the day to do it. I mean, go listen to it, if nothing else. I'd appreciate that. And follow me on here. I post a lot of songs every day, a lot of fun songs. Well, although today's 1970, and I'm wrapping it up at 79, I'll be glad to be free of the yoke, frankly.
Good. Well, you're in the home stretch, it sounds like. Yeah. Well,
And
what's that?
how are you doing anyhow? I haven't seen you in ages.
I'm okay. Yeah. You mentioned that Eli is 4. I don't think I saw you since before he was born.
Entirely possible. I played in York twice. Once at Sign of the Wagon, and then once at Cable House, or Cable House Presents. That was with Dan that second time, and it was Low Cut Connie too. I think was on the bill, right?
Oh, that's right. It was a double headline with Low Cut Connie, and I think it snowed that night because every time I run into Low Cut Connie and York comes up, they say, "Oh yeah, none of you in York were here. There were 5 people in the room that night because it snowed."
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Fun tour. A bunch of dates with them actually.
They're lunatics.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did talk to Will Donnelly, their guitarist, who's been with them all this time, last week or 2 weeks ago on one of these Sunday chats. I've talked to now, I think, close to 70 people. It's been really wonderful. And it's been fascinating to kind of see the spectrum of how this is affecting everybody, and also the arc of how people have come to cope with it over time, the longer it goes.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I've had the opportunity to do that. I'm really glad I got a chance to catch up with you a bit today.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for taking the time. And I have one more of these today for anyone who's watching. At 3 o'clock, I'm going to be talking to Judd Johnson, who's in Austin, Texas. He's the drummer for Glorietta, School of Rock teacher. Nice dude. And then we'll do it again at least a couple more Sundays. So, Aaron, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Nice to see you, JJ.
Hope that you and your family continue to be well, and I hope I get to see you in real life before too much longer.
Likewise.
Thanks.
Okay. See ya.